Okay, it's 7 o'clock. We are the Milton Equestrian Committee, meeting Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Our roll call: Larry Covington.
Here.
Susan Day.
Present.
Susan Kimball.
Here.
Brian Maloney.
Here.
Tony Rich. Is he online or?
He's not.
Okay. Chrissy Reeves.
Here.
Tony may join us on Zoom at a later time. Do we have approval of the meeting agenda?
Sorry, I need to read the Zoom.
Okay.
Yep. I am Courtney Spriggs, Community Outreach Manager and Staff Liaison for the Milton Equestrian Committee. Welcome to tonight's Milton Equestrian Committee meeting. If you are attending virtually via Zoom, there are a few guidelines I'd like to mention. Everyone is muted and your videos are turned off by default to minimize any disruptions. If you'd like to make a comment during the public hearing portions of this meeting, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Hand. If you're calling into the meeting on a phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 on your keypad. Once the moderator calls your name, please unmute yourself by clicking the microphone button on the bottom of your screen or pressing *6 on your phone. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay. Do we have approval of the meeting agenda?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion. Do we all approve?
Yeah.
Motion approved. Approval of the minutes from June 2020 meeting?
I move to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve. Public comment? I have one registered card from Nan Buckner. Would you like to comment at this time, Nan?
I guess you guys know, I mean, I don't have land comments, and I don't know what this committee has really done. I really didn't know anything about the committee. This year,
Hi. If you want to talk to them, you'll have to talk into the microphone. Sorry.
oh, okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Into this microphone here?
Yep.
Okay. I'm sure you guys know that this year the fireworks were worse than they ever have been. And I really appreciated the video that the city put out. I spread that around. I tried to spread as much awareness, throughout my neighborhood. Of course, my farm is surrounded by, the Manor and Hopewell Downs. And I try to educate people and just try to let them know what the dangers of fireworks are with animals. And most people sound really considerate, like they're going to comply, but it was a war zone where I live. And my bad, I should have called the police. It's really hard to pinpoint where they're coming from. So I'd really like to see the city maybe address, what other resources we might have with trying to pinpoint the fireworks. That's the hardest thing. I'm at the bottom of a hill. I'm in a floodplain, and the Manor's up on a hill, and Hopewell Downs is over here, and then I've got Thompson Road behind me, and so I'm kind of down in this basin. I have no idea because it ricochets everywhere. So I feel like if I call the police, I don't know that they're going to be able to pinpoint exactly where, so I feel it's kind of a futile attempt. So I just try to educate people as much as I can on what the dangers of fireworks are and try to be all, peace and flowers, and it just doesn't work. So I hope we can come to some sort of task force or something that can address some of these issues that I know everyone that owns horses faces, and dogs as well. So thank you for allowing me to speak. I appreciate it.
Nan, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
So as an equestrian, what proactive measures did you take to prepare your barn and your horses for that?
Oh, well, I do medicate my horses with Dimosodin gel. If you know much about sedating horses, you know that sedation only lasts about 90 minutes. It's really hurts my time up.
Go ahead. Yep, go ahead.
That's okay. Can we extend it?
Yes, you extend.
It's difficult to extend continual sedation, particularly when you don't know how long it's going to be. So I tend to medicate my horses generally on New Year's Eve, right about dark, which is 5:30. On 4th of July, I tend to go a little bit later, usually about 7:30, 8 o'clock, because the firecrackers start generally sooner than the, commercial grade type things. That lasts like 90 minutes. And then what I do is I turn all the lights on my barn so that the flashing doesn't bother them. I have, big blue party, cable, Bluetooth speakers that I put around. It's really difficult in the summer to close up my barn. I would try to do that, but it's just too hot.
Right.
So, I've gone the route of homeopathic things, confidence EQ, rescue remedy, some tryptophan types of things. It doesn't last. And when the fireworks, I came up from the barn this year at 4:30 in the morning when things were quiet. So that's my biggest issue. I certainly don't mind medicating my horses so that everyone can enjoy their holiday. I don't. But when you've got it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, that's really difficult to try to do. So most of my horse friends are in the same boat. We all medicate our horses for that. And I'm sure that pretty much everybody knows you should keep the music on. And I also use ear puffs.
So as a committee, is there anything that we can offer as far as courses, as far as desensitization for horses, or bringing in speakers or hosting clinics? Would that be of value to you? I mean, you're certainly an experienced equestrian, and you're doing a lot of the
well, and I also own a
things.
tack shop, so I try to educate people in the
Right.
shop as well. But you're kind of preaching to the choir with the horse people. It's the non-horse people, I think, that we need to address. And if there were a way that we could be part of, I don't know, a rally, or to have, be at the, no one's rallying now, at the, I don't know, whatever kind of outdoor meetings or fairs or festivals or something to try to educate the non-horse owners. But everybody owns dogs. I mean, most people that I know own dogs are like, oh gosh, it's a nightmare for our dogs. So I think if we could just address somehow all pet owners. Yes.
You said you had noticed the video and the different things, that the signs and
Uh-huh.
things that have been around. You've been here obviously a while. Have you noticed any, like over the last few years, have you noticed any difference in the level of fireworks?
Yes,
You
they've
think it's-
increased.
You think it's increased?
I do, and I think that more than anything, it's because the level of fireworks that are allowed to be sold. You can go up to Walmart and you can buy commercial grade fireworks. Before, you weren't really able to do that. If there was a way we could limit, I know those people have to have licenses to be able to sell those kind of things. If we could limit those licenses, or something like that, that might be something that we might really be able to do. I just think that, for the most part, people really, they don't know what they don't know, and everybody's been cooped up with, the pandemic that we're in, and of course everybody wants to celebrate. And so I'm very, I understand that part, but the other side of the coin is, I'm still medicating cuts from my horses spinning in their stalls. I'm still doctoring up, swollen legs from, the damage. Now I keep mine in. Some people don't. Some people just let them run. But, so yeah. I think it's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse. Okay.
My thing has always been too, I've always said if we could organize like the most audacious laser light show and make it just available for everyone instead of fireworks, how awesome would that be? That would be an expensive thing, but where I'm from originally is Cincinnati, Ohio, and they used to do that. They used to do this tremendous laser light show. It would cost thousands of dollars, I'm sure, to coordinate it with music and all that, but it might be something that we might want to maybe look into as an alternative from that standpoint, because we all want to celebrate. So thanks for letting me speak. And I didn't mean to take up so much time on the agenda, but I know you guys will put your heads together, and I'm available to do whatever. If I need to outreach to the community, I own a tack shop. I don't know if you guys know me. I own the Snooty Fox Tack Exchange. I'm happy to use that as a platform to, stand up. Everybody knows how I feel. The other thing, in answer to your question, I did notice the big orange signs this year that were, I saw that on New Year's Eve. That was amazing. So thank you. So feel free to contact me for any reason, any public relations, anything. I'm here.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Nan.
Nan.
Thanks for letting me speak.
Commentary.
I appreciate
As you
it.
might have noticed, we do have fireworks discussion further down. So it will be revisited within this meeting.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
Okay. On to new business. Community development discussion regarding equestrian-friendly ordinance.
And before Shuba comes up, you all, board members where you're sitting, have a monitor underneath your glass screen. If you'll hit the button on the far right corner, it'll turn it on and you'll be able to see Caleb's presentation that way.
Where's the button?
On the
You see,
underneath
it's right below you to the right of you.
On the monitor.
At the very end, on the monitor
computer
below.
monitor under the desk, right?
I see.
There you go. Everybody get it? You will need to scoot back, right? I'm sorry about your neck. David's coming to help.
Hi.
Hey again, I'm Shubha Jangam. I'm a senior planner at City
Nice
of
to see you,
Milton.
Shubha.
We are here again. With me today, we have Parag Agarwal, Director of Community Development, and Michelle McIntosh-Ross, Principal Planner with City of Milton. And we are here to talk to you about equestrian-friendly zoning, your favorite topic, I guess. I'm the project manager for this project, and we are working with TSW to get a zoning solution. Caleb, who is a TSW consultant, he will be talking more about a draft that we have come up with after meeting you and Planning Commission and Council once. We have come up and we have had interviews, one-on-one interviews with, I think Ms. Nan was one of them, and Tony Rich was talked to us on phone. So we had a few interviews. We had one-on-one discussions with a lot of equestrian members, and we have come up with a draft that you will be discussing today. So with that, I'll give it to Caleb.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Alrighty, I'm going to advance the slide. How do I do that? It's not going forward. There we go. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to present. I apologize not being able to be there in person, but such is sort of the world we live in today. As Shubha mentioned, we've been working with the Equestrian Committee and the City of Milton for several months now to get us to the point we are this evening, unveiling the draft Equestrian Zoning District. As you may recall, as Shubha mentioned, we met with the city and many of the stakeholders, including yourself, early on in the process. We conducted a tour of the city and, very importantly, as you'll see soon, began to look at best practices for preserving equestrian lifestyles in various other jurisdictions. From that point, we met with the committee and began to envision what exactly it meant in the city of Milton to protect the equestrian and rural lifestyle. We had some meetings with the Planning Commission and City Council, and all of that has sort of brought us to the point where we are today, which is unveiling the draft recommendations for consideration. Our goal is to get feedback from you this evening and in subsequent days, and then to finalize the ordinances, working with the city staff and others. Next. There we go. There we go. So the first thing I wanted to do was remind everyone of the goals and objectives of this process. These goals and objectives were developed in consultation with the Planning Commission and really get back to why are we doing this. The original vision of Milton, as you were aware, was founded on preserving the rural character and small town quality of life. This problem statement really begins to encompass why we're working on this equestrian district and really the importance of being proactive about preserving the rural and equestrian landscapes in the city. As you know, there's been a great deal of loss of this quality of life and lifestyle in recent years. And so part of this ordinance is intended to respond to that and really preserve that character. Additionally, there are a variety of goals that have been developed, and these goals really focus on seeing what we can do with zoning and development regulations to really meet that problem statement. And so we have focused on what can be done in the zoning ordinance. We know from talking to you and others that there are many other aspects of protecting the equestrian lifestyle, for example, fireworks and noise ordinances that are not in zoning, but we're here tonight to talk about what zoning can do to minimize the fragmentation of the rural landscape through development regulations. And so with that said, a series of more specific objectives were developed. These include streamlining the regulations to encourage the preservation of existing farms in the city. They include looking at how we can add incentives in the zoning to allow certain uses by right that are compatible with the rural character. And they involved identifying non-development related tools such as speed limit, noise ordinance, etc. And then all of this is really premised on the idea of creating a new zoning district that's really attractive to property owners. That really is something that people who still have active farmland or active equestrian lifestyles would want to rezone to because there are benefits to it. Next, let's see. So from that, we have developed an incentive-based zoning district. That district is proposed to be called AG2. As you're aware, the city of Milton is largely AG1 zoning, and so this new AG2 zoning would incorporate incentives to preserve that equestrian character that are not found in AG1 today. I'm going to go through those in some detail because there is a lot, but I wanted to again stress that this is intended to create incentives for the property. One of those incentives is that the city of Milton really understands the value of preserving the equestrian lifestyle. And so one of the things that TSW is recommending is that at such time as this ordinance is adopted, the city should really think about a voluntary call for rezoning so that property owners who voluntarily want to rezone to this district can do so. They can waive rezoning fees and they can really have a streamlined process to incorporating some of the benefits. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that we've tried to structure the actual format of this ordinance to be very similar to AG1. And so as I go through this, I'm going to be focusing on the things that are different, the things that are new content, the things that are incentive. And I've done this in the presentation by underlining them and bolding them. So the first thing you'll notice when you look at the new AG2 zoning district are the use requirements. Many of the use requirements carry over directly from AG1. So you can do farming, you can do agriculture, you can do veterinarian clinic, but we've also developed some particular equestrian use standards directly based on your comments. So that things like horseshoes and blacksmith and riding stables, all of that would be allowed as a principal use, which means that unlike the zoning ordinance today, where you generally have to have a residential use on the property, equestrian uses and rural uses would be allowed by right as a principal use without having a house at all. So that's a major change, but it's also a very important one in terms of expressing the intent of the new AG2. Now, what would the equestrian use detail involve? Well, you may remember Julia Brodsky, who was at our previous meeting. She did a lot of research on some of the sort of state-of-the-art equestrian districts, both in the Southeast and across the country. Those have directly guided these recommended uses, which would include equine facilities such as polo fields, riding areas, etc., farriers or horseshoe work, equestrian constructions, commercial and non-commercial stables, garment for equine fabrication, which you already have today, and then even smaller general stores that would carry equine products and equine lifestyle. So these would all be allowed as a permitted use and are not currently included in AG1 today. The other thing that has been done is to look at the relationship between the new AG2 district and those uses that are currently administrative in the city of Milton today. These are not actually found in the zoning districts, but they're instead found in Article 4 of the zoning ordinance. So some of those would be carried over directly into AG2, for example, guest houses, a mobile home when a house was being built, relocated residential structures, etc. But there were certain uses that were allowed citywide or allowed in AG1 that we determined probably were not compatible with the equine lifestyle. And one of those was golf courses. And so all of the standard administrative permits would be permitted except golf courses. Additionally, there are uses that are allowed today by use permit under the citywide provision. Those would continue to be allowed in AG2 in the same way that they are in AG1, but we've made a couple of minor modifications. The first modification is that today, private schools are really allowed by use permit anywhere. And because part of the quality of life issues and preserving the equestrian lifestyle is so important to AG2, we've recommended modifying that so that private schools would only be allowed if their curriculum is agricultural or equine related, really to be compatible with the surrounding lifestyle. The other thing that we've done is today, the city of Milton allows senior housing everywhere in the city by use permit. Because of the potential conflicts between larger senior housing developments and farms or equine properties, we felt it was appropriate not to allow those uses to even be considered by special use permit in AG2. And so that would be removed from the district. Now, additionally, there have been a couple of changes to the permitted lot sizes. These changes are intended to be compatible with achieving true equestrian character while also recognizing the fact that a lot of areas in Milton that are possible candidates to AG2 may not have the larger lots. So what are some of those standards? The first thing is that we believe the lot size required should really depend on the kind of use on the property. So if you're agriculture, for example, a small berry patch or a small farm or a stable, you should continue to be able to use the 1 acre lot. The purpose of that is we want to make sure that there aren't nonconformities and that people who may have farms that are several different parcels don't have an unintended consequence or unintended impact of being out of conformance. And so the 1 acre lot in AG2 would carry forward into, in AG1, pardon me, would carry forward into AG2 as well. Now the big change, however, relates to single family dwellings. As you know today, AG1 is more or less responsible for the creation of 1 acre lot subdivisions across the city of Milton. And if part of this code is to really encourage the preservation of the equestrian lifestyle, we've recommended a minimum 10 acre lot for single family dwellings. Really to make sure that those equestrian facilities do not end up becoming just another way to create large lot single family subdivisions. Now with that said, we have incorporated provision that single family lots that are smaller than 10 acres would be grandfathered. And so we've incorporated that as well because we think that's very important going forward. The other change relates to issues of setbacks. As many of you have told us during the course of our interviews, there are some real problems with AG1 today, especially when it comes to putting barns or buildings housing animals on various portions of lots. To address that, the proposed AG2 ordinance would incorporate the same numeric setback requirements of AG1. So for example, a 60-foot front yard, 25-foot side interior, 40-foot street, and 50-foot rear. However, buildings containing a permitted use, remember agriculture and equestrian would now be a permitted use, could be anywhere in the required yard. So if you had a barn or if you had another building housing animals, you could put that anywhere in the lot and not necessarily have to worry about whether it's in the front yard or the rear yard or the side yard. Now, with that said, there would continue to be setback requirements from the lot line, but the idea is that this would be much more flexible than the current situation. Additionally, structures such as fences, walls, and driveways could go anywhere. Now, another really important change relates to how we define accessory uses. And for those of you who don't deal with the nuances of zoning every day, a principal use is the primary use of a property. So as we've said before, principal uses could be equestrian, farming, or single-family residential in certain cases. Accessory uses are uses that are subordinate or accessory to that. They're really the other things that go on the property. We wanted to make very clear that equestrian agricultural uses were allowed everywhere in the AG2 district. And so what we've done is we've defined those as an accessory use, and we've defined a couple of other accessory use standards that are compatible with those that I'll talk about now. So what are accessory agricultural, general, and specialized farming? This would be a provision of the code that would allow a single-family house to have equine facilities, farming, or other uses anywhere you have a single-family home. The structure could be anywhere on the property, as we've already established, but again, would have to be relatively far from any adjacent lot line. Additionally, we would incorporate the current standards in the code related to minimum lot sizes for animal barns. So for example, today, if you have a 5-acre lot, you can have animals that would carry over. But if not, if you're a new lot, you would have to have 10 acres. And there would be additional setback requirements that largely conform to that. Now, another big change is that today, if someone in AG1 wants to build a barn, they have to get a use permit. And that's an additional process that can be, again, discouraging of the preservation of that lifestyle. Because AG2 is intended to encourage agricultural and equestrian uses, barns would become a matter of right, either as a principal building or an accessory building. And then finally, there would be standards incorporated that say that animals must be maintained in a safe manner and per all applicable regulations in the city and the state of Georgia. The second new accessory use is what we're calling an accessory agricultural dwelling. If you've looked at any of the equestrian facilities in Milton, you may have noticed that a lot of them actually have a smaller house or almost like a guest house associated with them. The reason for this is that when these properties were developed under the Fulton County zoning, they had to have a house in order to have other uses. In order to make sure that we don't inadvertently outlaw that, we have created a new use definition called an accessory agricultural dwelling that would allow a farm or allow an equestrian facility to have a 1,000 square foot, tinier, smaller, basically a dwelling unit on the premises. It could not then contain a single family dwelling unit. It would only be an accessory dwelling to really reflect those farms and uses that already have them today. Now, in order to do that, the farm would have to have a minimum of 5 acres, again, because we don't want to create a loophole for subdivisions, but very importantly, they would have to be accessory to the principal use of the property as a farm. And then finally, we have incorporated the existing accessory covered and uncovered riding areas. These would be allowed accessory to single family dwellings, and of course would have to be, would only be accessory to that use, because otherwise they're generally allowed as an agricultural or farming use. They would continue to have a 5-acre lot. They would continue to have to be a minimum of 100 feet from a lot line, but they would be allowed as a matter of right, not necessarily have to get a use permit. So again, that would be a little bit of incentive to encourage someone who had a house and wanted to do this to be able to do it in the AG2 a little bit easier. And then probably the biggest change, and the thing where we really want your feedback on this evening, is we think it might be a good idea to look at allowing a very few types of commercial uses in the AG2 district, and only when they are accessory to a bona fide farm or a bona fide equestrian facility. And we're calling these uses accessory, equine, or agricultural commercial uses. And in thinking about these uses, we wanted to be very careful in the kind of uses that were compatible with that character in Milton. And so we looked at several different things. The first thing we looked at was whether or not the commercial use was compatible with the Milton character, with the equestrian uses. We looked at the traffic impact. We looked at the noise impact and the visual impacts. And then finally, the environmental impacts. And we started by conducting a series of case studies where we reached out to farms and equestrian facilities all over the Southeast. We looked at some in North Carolina, Bluffton, Georgia, Fairview, North Carolina, all over the region to understand exactly the kind of uses that were compatible with true farming and equestrian operations, and that were really incentives to help those businesses make money and pay their taxes and be a financial business model going forward. And then based on those, we determined what kind of uses may be applicable or appropriate for the city of Milton by assessing all of those possible uses against the equestrian impact, traffic, noise, visual, and environmental. The chart before you is a summary of some of our findings. So for example, if you look at things like artist studios, those were allowed in many of the districts and generally have a very low impact. And so they are shaded in green. However, other uses tend to have more impact. Some jurisdictions actually allow conference centers, and they can be pretty big conference centers at that. We determined that that kind of use probably had too many potential negative impacts to really be something that we would recommend in the city of Milton. The same with offices, the same with larger restaurants, and the same with retail. And so the only uses we identified and recommended here are the ones that have a relatively low impact. And so those would include artist studio, bed and breakfast, country inn, craft manufacturing, which I'll talk about in a moment, processing of agricultural products, rural events, which are really allowed today, equine and agricultural sale, wineries, and then yoga studios. So those would, generally speaking, be allowed anywhere in the AG2 district by right, but only if there was a true bona fide agricultural or equestrian use on the property. They would continue to be subject to all of the applicable use standards, and very importantly, there would be some additional restrictions imposed on them to really be compatible with the farming lifestyle and equestrian lifestyle. The first one would be that they would have to have a minimum 10-acre lot. So you may recall 10 acre is sort of the largest lot size required, and they would have to be constructed concurrently or after to the principal use. So a person could not come in and say, I'm going to have a horse farm, or I'm going to have a vineyard, and then only build the retail. The farm would have to be in place, the horse facilities would have to be in place before the city could approve that. There are also some very important standards that we've proposed. The first standard is that there would actually be a definition of bona fide agricultural or equestrian uses that we would take directly from CUVA. CUVA, as you know, is the state tax incentive for agricultural properties. Now, that program would not be a requirement, but they have a really good definition for bona fide agricultural uses that we thought would make a lot of sense to use in the city of Milton. Additionally, that use could occur anywhere in the property except within the required yards, but we really wanted to make sure that it doesn't overwhelm the property. And so the total floor area of that would not be allowed to exceed 20,000 square feet, nor occupy more than 50% of the site. And that 50% of the site would include things like the building, parking, outdoor dining, anything that wasn't agriculture. And again, that number comes directly from what some of the CUVA standards are today. And then finally, the AG2 district incorporates several other provisions that are really found in most of the City of Milton zoning districts. Those include the rural Milton standards for entrances, rural view sheds, and fencing. So that is an overview of, generally speaking, the preliminary direction. There were a couple of other things that, before we break to talk, I wanted to ask for you to think about as we go forward. The first thing was that we had a lot of conversation early on about what things we can do in AG2 that will provide an appropriate buffer between the equestrian and rural landscape and the adjacent development. Now, as currently envisioned, or current in the zoning ordinance today, there are no buffer requirements. So someone could buy an AG1 property adjacent to another AG1 property and basically develop a subdivision. Really, the requirements would be only applicable if they wanted to do a school or a church or something like that. But when you look at all of the other zoning districts in the city of Milton, you'll see that there are some setback and buffer requirements there. We're very interested in knowing if you think that this particular table, which is in another part of the zoning ordinance, should be updated to require additional buffers adjacent to AG2, and if so, how much? Again, the standard, as you see on the right-hand side, is typically between 25 and 50 feet for a side, 50 and 75 feet for a rear, and then there's an additional setback. So let's think about that and talk a little bit about it as we move forward. Another additional incentive that I would love your feedback on relates to the tree ordinance. As you know, the City of Milton is finalizing the tree ordinance and has developed some customized standards related to tree canopy protection in AG1. Basically, what those say is that if a property is between 1 and 1.5 acres, 57% of the property has to be covered with tree canopy. If it's between 1.5 and 3, it's 40%, and above 3, it drops down to 25%. I'm interested in knowing if those numbers, in your opinion, make sense for AG2. If AG2 is intended to provide true agricultural uses, one of the things that we could do as part of creating it and adopting the tree ordinance is come up with additional standards that would make it able to preserve trees, but at the same time, perhaps have a number that was compatible with agricultural uses. So I wanted you to think a little bit about that going forward. And then finally, we are very aware that there are other things that are important to the equestrian community that can't necessarily go within the AG2. Some of those would include thinking about additional transfer development right incentives, and you may know that TDR allows development to transfer from rural sending areas to receiving areas such as Crabapple and Deerfield. We also know that there should be continued conversation about assessment and tax values, but all of that requires careful coordination with the county. And then, of course, there are a variety of other incentives that would really need to be bigger citywide conversations related to how are permits reviewed in AG2, can they be expedited, can they be administrative, or could fees be modified? And so with that said, that's an overview of where we are today. I know that I've talked about a lot, but I would love to hear from you on anything that may have piqued your interest, or any questions that you may have, or any response to the additional questions about buffers and tree ordinances or anything else. So thank you very much.
So Caleb, everyone looks very confused and happy, okay? long presentation. So again, as you just heard Caleb's long presentation, again, it has been going on for, again, I'm Parag Agrawal. I think everyone knows me by now.
Yeah,
so let me give you an overview of what this is, right? So there are two ways what we are trying to approach this project towards. Like number one, for our existing equestrian estates, we want to give them incentives so that they can stay as an equestrian estate. So again, what additional uses, what additional development regulations, benefits which we can give to the property owners so that they do not sell their equestrian estates. That's number one, right? Number second, no matter how many incentives we offer to a property owner, there are always some life changes. Someone wants to move on or whatever it is, and they want to sell their properties, right? And if they want to sell their properties, and if suppose someone has 20 acres of land, the property does not get subdivided into 21-acre lots. The property gets subdivided into, let's say, 4 5-acre lots. Right? So there are two approaches. The first approach is we want that the equestrian states should remain as they are. Number second, if we want to subdivide the properties, then the properties get subdivided into larger lots. So again, that's the bigger overview of what we are trying to achieve, right, Caleb?
Correct.
Right. Yes. Right. And as part of the incentives, as Caleb mentioned, this project only looks at the development regulations, like the zoning incentives. We heard from many of the property owners that they would like to minimize their property taxes, right? Like Kuva, like can the city offer some property tax incentives? Because in your property tax bill, there's one line item for the county, and then there's a second line item for the city taxes, right? So we heard from many of the property owners saying that can city offer some incentives on property tax bill? Yes, that can be achieved, but that's not within the scope of this project.
As I say, that's unfortunate because if you're selling your property, show me the money.
Show me the money. Right. So again, show me the money. The way we are trying to show the money is by offering you additional use types so that you can remain in business. So instead of, I get many applications in my office saying that if someone acquires a 20-acre lot and they want to build a house, and suppose there are 2 or 3 barns in the front yard, if you're building a house, all of a sudden that becomes a front yard. You have to go to BZA if you want to stay, if the barn has to stay there, or we will ask you to demolish those barns. So here you are, right? We want those barn structures to stay as they are. The property owners also want those barn structures to stay in their yards, but the city looks at them as a front yard. And you cannot, those structures cannot stay in any front yard. So again, we are just trying to, but you're right, that property taxes will be a key to look at further stages.
But this is independent of the taxes.
Again,
right, so
we are looking at the property tax issues at this stage also, but again, there will be recommendations that will need further studies. We will be working with the city's finance department to basically look at what sort of financial issues the city will face and what sort of incentives the city can offer financially.
But I think as far as the lots adjacent to the AG1, I love the concept of increasing that buffer. That'll help, fireworks and other activities and stuff like that, kind of push people back. The tree ordinance makes no sense at all when you're dealing with large property. I mean, I would hate to have 25% of my property in trees. I'd have to plant some pastures. So
And that's on a buffer situation? I had that exact same thought when I saw that.
So again, there are some nuances to it. So it's 25% or existing. So the word is 25% or existing.
Okay.
So if you only have 5%, if you already have a pasture on your property, if you only have 5% of tree canopy, we will not force you to put 25%. But if you have, let's say, 50% of tree canopy, you can reduce it to 25%. So it's like 25% or existing. So you only have 5%, we will not ask you to push it to 25%.
What would the current regulations be if you wanted to create pasture on your 10-acre parcel? What would you be required to have?
So this will be the current regulations. So currently we are working with the city council, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we have been working for almost 5 years now. Hopefully by August 3rd, these regulations will be in effect. And what Caleb just showed, this slide, these will be the current regulations. Okay. So this is basically coming from our new tree conservation ordinance.
Okay.
But I think she has a great point. If you buy a 10-acre farm and most of it's wooded and you want to make it into pasture, you would be required to leave a quarter of that wooded. And so you could only, so
very little pasture.
Yeah,
That's
so
against- that
there
was-
should
No,
be an
definitely.
exception.
Grass doesn't grow under
Definitely.
trees.
So many of the city council members also had the same comment which you are making, that we are just trying to balance the tree canopy with the pastures. So we basically came up with these regulations in the tree conservation ordinance. But as Caleb just mentioned, we would like to know more about if you have a 10-acre property, maybe it does not make sense to even have 25%. So again, want to get your feedback.
And if you're trying to make specific AG2 ordinances that will benefit farm owners, you can't have a specific amount of percentage for tree canopy because grass doesn't grow under trees. So most pastures, we have very little trees in them by design.
No, definitely. So again, it's a great point, which we have been sort of
But
struggling.
you're saying that this is already going into effect?
These regulations which you see over here will be part, if the city council approves it, will be part of the new tree conservation ordinance. But we can always put some more regulations as part of your equestrian zoning project that will help the pasture appearance
I think that would
of
be
the
really
properties.
important to modify that
Rock,
for
is
AG2.
there any way we can add noise ordinances to the AG2 structure? Because really what I find our biggest problem with agricultural properties is peace.
Yes. So Caleb, help me. So noise and speed.
Yeah.
Like the speed limits and noise are the two issues which we heard in our interviews, that how we can minimize the speed limits and the noise issues also, which we are looking at it, right, Caleb?
Great.
Correct.
Yeah.
The rest of it looks great.
Again, there was a
standard.
lot of information, but if you go from here and say, hey, what about this, right? It's still work in progress. It's work in progress. Any new ideas, which we can, again, that's the reason Dr. Maloney has experience of, I like to work with stakeholder committees, but since we already have this equestrian committee, I thought we will just work with you folks. You have so much of experience, so.
Brad, can you explain again the difference with it all went by so fast, with the single-family dwelling, what the restrictions are on the properties with dwellings, like?
Caleb, do you want to, Caleb?
I couldn't hear the question.
Oh, sorry, it's the mask. Can you explain a little bit more the restrictions with a single-family dwelling? I know that there were some things that you had restricted with a single-family dwelling. What could be included?
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that AG2 is not intended to be a residential subdivision district. And so any single family dwelling that is already there, or a lot that is already sort of built for that purposes, would continue to be in operation and would continue to be subject to effectively the same standards that you have in AG1 today. We've actually written or envisioned the ordinance that way. So if you're AG1 and you have a house and you get rezoned to AG2, you're still more or less subject to the AG1 standards. However, if you want to create a new single-family lot, the minimum lot size would be 10 acres. So today, the minimum lot size is 1 acre, but as part of this proposal, the minimum lot size for a single-family use would go up to 10. And so that's a major change, but the idea is to encourage viable farmland and viable farmland preservation, and not just have AG2 be another opportunity for sort of 1 acre subdivisions.
One thing which we can also discuss in this committee, and maybe you can think more, whether this 10-acre threshold is a right threshold. Maybe you want to have 8 acres, right? So if you will basically say 10 acres is a good number, but maybe in Milton we do not have many properties that can take that benefit, right? Maybe you can say it should be 8 acres, it should be 7 acres or something. But we can always review that part also, right? Again, this 10 acres.
Absolutely.
Again, this 10 acres is threshold. It's like maybe if there are not enough properties that qualify for 10 acres, then there's no point of having this, right?
I mean, there's a finite number of properties that would
Qualify.
that we're talking about. So I guess it would make sense to sort of review how many properties we're looking at, what is the true acreage there, and maybe back into the proper threshold, whether it's 7 acres or 10 acres or.
Yeah.
And that was going to be my question to Caleb with his research. Does he have any data on that? How many farms of what size and all that are in Milton?
We have not looked at farm size in the city of Milton per se. We have done an analysis of the sort of average lot size in AG1, but we don't necessarily know if they're farms or not.
How many?
I'm sorry, sir?
How many of those are in Milton?
If you give me a moment, I can scroll back. This particular graphic, which I hope you can see. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a delay here. This shows, generally speaking, the AG1 parcels in the city. So everything that is dark green or sort of forest green, if you can see my cursor over by the river, those two colors are properties that are 10 acres or more. The yellow is 1 acre or under an acre, and the oranges are generally in the 3 to 5 range. So anything that is green or higher is either 10 acres, which is the dark green, or should I say, 40 acres, which is the dark green, 10 to 40, which is the medium green, and then more than 5, which is the light green.
But you didn't count them up.
We did not for the purpose of the slide. We can easily do it in GIS if you would like us to share that information.
Yeah, that's good information. That's good information.
But we do have, it seems from this map, we do have some properties that will qualify with that threshold, but we can come up with the number.
So I have a question. So a lot of the concern with preserving the rural is the view shed that we drive around. So a lot of these properties that are 10 acres and more are not necessarily view shed as you drive around through Milton. So, for example, I don't know the exact address of it, but there's a house that was just built on Freemanville that has a small barn next to it. That's a small lot. That's got to be under 4 acres, I'm guessing. So that they put a house, a barn, and a riding ring. That would not be applicable to AG2, correct?
Correct. That would not be permitted.
Yeah.
So could that continue as AG1? Those, because I guess my concern
Definitely, yes. Again, this project will not rezone anything, and we want you to be as a partner to spread the message around. We are not rezoning anything, right? So it's basically if any property owner would like to, again, we have so many rezoning districts. So if any property owner is willing to come forward because of the incentives, and they say that we want to rezone the property from AG1 to AG2 because of this reason, then only the city will rezone the property. It's not like yes to To answer your question, that property will remain as AG1.
So I guess my personal concern is as I drive through Milton, a lot of what I see, that is our view in Milton, is under 10 acres along our major roads. And my concern is that I would love these are these properties that are 8 acres that are they're being subdivided. The one on the corner of Red and Freemanville, it's now subdivided. That AG2 would not have helped that property. There are so many of those properties that could maintain a rural presence that could be between 4 and 8 acres. Makes a huge difference in a rural setting, livestock, things like that. I understand not going down to like a 3-acre type parcel, but anywhere between 4 and 10, there are a ton of properties that wouldn't be able to benefit from this AG2 and still completely affect the feel of rural Milton.
Very good feedback. Thank you. So again, definitely we can, as I mentioned, it's a scale, right? Again, 10 acres, that's the reason that was the question. And we can definitely look at the scale to make sure that a maximum number of properties get incentives benefited.
And Parag, Tony Rich is on Zoom and he's a equestrian committee member who couldn't be here tonight, and said that from what he recalls, he was the equestrian committee representative on the tree ordinance committee, I believe. From what I recall, we didn't put any specific percentage of tree canopy coverage requirement on AG1. The idea was that if someone wanted to make most or all of their property into pasture land, it would still accomplish one of the initial goals of the ordinance, which is to maintain the rural landscape of Milton.
So the slide which Caleb just showed that talks about the tree conservation ordinance 1 to 1.5. Tony, so you are right. This breakup was not done by the stakeholders committee, which you are part of, and neither by the planning commission. This was suggested by the city council. So again, city council has not approved it yet, but in the last city council meeting, this is what they suggested. Again, this was a discussion that took place.
Okay.
So if that's what was presented to City Council.
That was not presented, but the City Council members recommended this.
Gotcha. But I don't know if it's possible for us to amend, or if the committee's in favor of proposing that for AG1 or AG2.
Definitely, that's the reason why we are here.
0.
No, makes sense. Maybe, so here you are for AG2, you can say, we do not want to have any tree requirements. I'm just saying this. So for AG2, which is the new zoning district, which will be the new zoning district, or you can say 0 or maybe 5%, whatever it is, minimal, if it's the right word. It should be the minimal requirement.
I would agree to that.
A second?
No.
Those in favor?
Got your feedback.
Made a motion?
Yep.
Got your feedback. Again,
Motion?
this is still work in
Minimal
progress.
requirement. It should not be a 25% requirement for AG2.
Again, this is still work in progress, right? A lot of information. We had 28 slides. So again, if you go home and if you find something else, some other good feedback, just let us know. Again, that's the purpose why we are here.
Yeah, I was also on the tree committee, and Tony and I tried to talk a lot about pastures, and we were somewhat told that it was a tree committee and that while pastures were important, we weren't here to talk about pastures. So we got pretty shut down in terms of that. So I'm glad that we can talk about it here.
So now you're on the right forum, right?
Well, the trees, I think, are best used in the buffer. They should be in the buffer,
Yes.
not in the actual usable
Absolutely.
property.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Michelle, do you have something to add?
So I just wanted to remind you folks about the tree requirement is that, for the AG2, we want the incentives to be in that zoning district, not necessarily in the AG1. So when you make your recommendation as far as that, keep in mind that we want the incentive to be in the AG2.
This is what they're saying.
Yeah.
In the new zoning district.
In the new zoning district,
Actually, the
yeah.
minimal requirement.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, we shall move forward to Equestrian Recognition Award discussion.
Susan? Great. May I make one more comment?
Oh, sure, Taylor.
Great. Sorry, everyone. I know that this may have been not as easy to do because of the virtual, but I do want to make myself available to anyone, any members of the committee who may want to reach out to me. The city staff has my cell phone, but if you would like to take it down, my number is 404-992-6945. Again, 404-992-6945. I'd be more than happy to talk to any of you later this week or next week if it's easier. I know that the virtual is not always the easiest format. So again, talk to Parag or Courtney or others, and they can share that, and they can also share my email. So thank you.
Thank you very much. You ready, Susan?
Yeah, I'm ready. So I had a few people mention to me just this idea of some sort of an equestrian-based award that was intended as a recognition of not related to performance, not winning at horse shows, but contributing to Milton in some way, whether it's somebody that's run an amazing rescue and placed a lot of horses that needed help, or I don't know. I mean, it was an idea that was raised, and I thought, well, it's worth discussing. I don't know if y'all have an appetite for an award type thing, but it does seem like a way to recognize good citizenship, good equestrian contributing folks in our area. So I thought I'd mention it and just see what you all thought.
You love it.
You like it?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Definitely worth.
What kind of parameters do you think we should, what are we trying to recognize?
Outstanding members of the community, service-based people, from anyone who's promoting equestrian. I think any of those things. It can be even people that work at the city that promote equestrian. I mean, I'm thinking Laura Bentley as a person. I don't know. There's a wide range of things you could use that for.
Right, and it wouldn't have to be defined too narrowly.
Right. No, I don't think so. I think it's just...
And people could just...
Annual award.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, citizens could be made aware of it and nominate
just promote
people.
equestrian.
Anything promoting or protecting or helping, yeah?
Yeah. We can create, maybe if you would like, we can all work on what guidelines we would like to have, and maybe, table this for right now and work on that and have something to
Talk about it
work
again
towards and come up with a program.
Email like we did the
criteria.
survey, just kind of bouncing around.
Okay, well, good. I'm glad y'all like the idea.
Oh, I love the idea.
Okay.
That's great.
Well, let's work on it then and talk about it again next month.
Okay. In unfinished business, we are back to our fireworks discussion. And I think there's zoning questions that we're going to discuss. And Susan, you had that as well?
Well, I had just thought of that as there's been so much discussion about fireworks lately, for good reason. I didn't know if in AG2, if there was, well, I didn't know it was called AG2 until tonight, but within this zoning project, if there was any place for that noise ordinances, you already raised that.
Right.
That's the only thing that I guess stricter noise ordinances.
So I had an interesting phone call today from someone who lives in a subdivision that backs up to a winery. And the winery is using some mechanism that shoots off 93 decibel shots to get rid of the birds. And this goes on all day long, every day. And it's all these farms that are surrounding her are just being bombarded. And she doesn't know what to do about it. And she sent a letter to us as a committee, and then and then she called me on the phone. And we didn't have a long discussion, but I realized in the course of that, she was talking about animal welfare, and I realized it's more of a disturbance of the peace. it's more of a noise ordinance than it is animal welfare, because she's also trying to run a home business, and she can't hear for the air horn or whatever thing they're using that sounds at 93 decibels to get rid of these birds. And all I said to her was, well, have you discussed maybe him using netting on his vines like they do out in California? I mean, they net them to keep the animals off of them.
Right.
And she said, oh, no, I politely asked him to keep it down, and it got louder. So apparently he can adjust the decibels of whatever thing he's using. The long and short of it is we have a fireworks problem, a firearms problem. Apparently, we now have this other thing that's being used agriculturally, and because we're AG1, and everyone thinks they can do whatever they want, and the state doesn't regulate any of those things, so all that noise can go on. So
Well,
I think
we do have noise ordinances,
we do,
but they're not enforced.
but they're not enforceable apparently because the state doesn't have the same noise ordinances. So this
Do we
is
try
where.
to enforce them?
Pardon?
Do we actually try to enforce them? I mean, I'm looking at my phone because I took some screenshots of the ordinances themselves earlier today.
So I was basically blindsided by the whole thing, and the only thing I do know is that after 10 p.m. they can't make all this noise. But up to that, during the day, they can make all the noise they like. I really find that might be a direction we need to go in terms of noise ordinances, because I think that's really the crux of the matter is how much volume of sound we can tolerate in order to have peaceful lives. I mean, this woman's basically got PTSD from this thing firing, this air cannon firing off and I heard it 4 times when I was on the phone with her for 5 minutes. And I could hear it on the phone, me talking on the phone. She goes, did you hear that? I was like, loud and clear. And she's in her house with the AC on. So I don't know what we can do as a committee, but I think that needs to become something that we focus on for our animals and for our welfare.
I think we got to be a little careful. I mean, because, with sound, it's interesting. A lawnmower is about 90 decibels.
But it's not an intermittent sound. It's a steady hum. So
Right.
And
But
everybody mows their lawn. We're not talking about
Well, and it is
everyone using an air
quantifiable
cannon.
how much. I mean, she can. I mean, not. I don't know how, but she can quantify how loud that is. I'm sure it's louder than a lawnmower. It sounds
Right.
like.
And it's longer than a lawnmower would be on.
Right.
It's longer and it's intermittent sound, which is what scares animals and people mostly. I mean, I'm really happy there's no vets, there's no military vets living nearby. Otherwise, they'd be traumatized. So not really for purposes of our discussion here today. It's just, I think that's one of the things we're dealing with this fireworks discussion.
I'm looking now at the website that the city put together for the fireworks when we were working on that, which I thought they did a great job trying to educate and work with everybody. But I don't know the specifics, but it says on all other dates other than the specific dates where fireworks are allowed, the city expressly prohibits loud and unreasonable noise. So that's expressly prohibited. I don't know, I mean, as far as that woman, what she's dealing with, I mean, I wonder if she's ever talked to the police about it. I mean, it is.
I don't know. I haven't heard. I think she's
I don't know what
been
would come
trying
of
to
it.
go about this the nice way and
Yes.
probably needs to be a little
Well, I
more
think it's
aggressive.
great I think she's started off the right way, right? I mean, she's trying to work with her neighbor and talk with them, but I guess they're not.
Yeah, there's some incongruence there apparently. So I do think our signs and everything were good, and I think our PSAs were good. I think with the volume of citizens we have in our area, the fireworks were as loud as ever, I
Well,
thought.
I think this year, particularly with the more organized celebrations all being canceled,
Mm-hmm.
I think people were like, well, hey, let's just do,
Independent
even
fireworks,
more
yeah.
than in the past. I was not here on the 4th of July, but from what I understand, that's...
Well, it's something to consider. I don't know if we can.
Well, and the other issue, you know, it is hard to tell, as Nan pointed out, where the sound is coming from. Plus, Milton geographically is not that large, and we're surrounded by Cherokee County, we're surrounded by Alpharetta, Roswell to some extent, and so we can't regulate what they do.
No.
You know, I mean, it's really, it's a problem. I think and I don't come up with any really good solution unless everybody could work together.
Do you think a petition would be in order?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Maybe.
Do you think if we put a petition out there for people to sign, that would help influence in any way?
I think that'll change behavior. I mean, I think fireworks are
Ask
out
Nan that
there.
question because I feel like consistently every year we've added a little bit more as far as reaching out to the public's just goodwill and consideration. There are the signs, and Larry did a great job with printing the signs, and then there was the electronic signs, and then Susan did the great video, and I think more than ever we reached out, and there was a ton of stuff on Facebook reminding people, you know, the hazards, not just equestrian. Equestrian is obviously a big concern, but dogs and PTSD and children and all kinds of situations. But it doesn't seem to be, unless it's some kind of mandate or restriction, it doesn't seem to be making enough of a difference just reaching out on, you know, goodwill, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think the education has to continue.
Right.
You know, because it's not something that everybody's going to just say,
Right.
hey. And there are always going to be people who are going to be deeply offended being asked to curb anything.
Right.
You tell me.
I said there are always going to be people who are very offended when they're asked to curb anything that they are legally allowed to do. And you can see that in the various social media discussions. And I think right now the mood of the country is pretty divisive on a lot of things. So I think we have to continue educating.
I agree.
And I'm just not sure, based on what the state is doing, that the city of Milton can do anything else. We can try again and ask, but
My feeling was maybe to do a petition in the city of Milton that we could send to the state legislators.
yeah,
And we might actually put a burr under their skin, but idea.
I've also been told by someone who tried to get something like that going that she was warned that opening it up, they might regulate fireworks even less. That by opening it up, you could make things worse instead of better. I don't know the details of that. So
either way, I mean, as far as fireworks go, specifically, you know, setting them off, as I understand it, and I'm looking for clarification from the city, is that we can't, there's a lot of talk and on social media and amongst friends about banning fireworks, which would be fine with me, but we can't, the city of Milton cannot ban fireworks. And so I guess one of the things mulling over is how to engage those citizens that have strong feelings about the harm that fireworks do. Let them know that we can't, Milton cannot ban them. So that, you know, if they want to affect change, they'll have to work with the state legislation, which is great. I mean, you know, people can band together and work on that. I, you know, personally, myself, I would support that, but that's a separate, you know, I don't want people spinning their wheels. Milton needs to ban fireworks. We can't.
Yeah, that's not.
As I understand it, because the state overrides our ability to do that. Now, what I would be more interested in that Milton, I think, there might be a way to make improvements, is enforcing existing noise ordinances. But as Nan pointed out, it's hard to pinpoint when you're talking about fireworks specifically, as opposed to like the cannons making the birds move. It's hard to locate who that, you can't go after them very effectively sometimes. But maybe there are some instances where we can enforce noise ordinances. I don't know. I mean, if we need to have a discussion with law enforcement, and they might have a reason why that's very difficult to do. I'm literally ignorant to the challenges they might face in enforcing that. And then I don't know if there's an appetite. That's what I'd like to know more about within the city to punish people. I don't know what punitive measures there are.
I did write a letter to the city.
Safety officer, and I got a phone call from a law enforcement officer who spent a great length of time with me, speaking to me and said, "Why didn't you call us?" And I said, "Well, I didn't want to utilize resources that might be needed elsewhere. And honestly, I don't know where they are." And he said, "We're not that busy. It's not like we're inner city." He said, "We would come to you and we would try to canvass the area and try to figure out where they were coming from." And I think law enforcement would be willing to help us do that. But if there's, 50 people that call all at the same time, I don't think that there's the resources to do that.
Right.
But I can look up his name in my phone in a minute and tell you who he was, because he said that his sister was a veterinarian in Aiken or Camden, and that he really understood our plight. He's very, very sensitive to it. So I think law enforcement is definitely wanting to help us. I just don't know what else we could do to pinpoint activity. But he said, like I said, he'd be willing to drive around through the neighborhoods, because it's not probably just one person doing one random cannon bomb. It's probably a repetitive thing. So just to let you know, I think law enforcement's in.
Yeah.
Have anything more to add on that? Should we move to property owners survey update?
That's me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, sorry, my mic is far away. As Chrissy suggested, she suggested narrowing the audience for that survey down to people who own 5 acres or more in Milton. And so we can narrow the audience that way, and we can identify property owners that have that. Sadly, we don't have their contact information. So what I'll have to do is try to one by one see if they're on our distribution list already, if we want to do that, or we can just send it out. But she makes a good point. It is not going to be relevant, obviously, to everyone. So, but the questions are ready, and they've been approved. We just need to decide on the audience and how to narrow that down. So if like I said, we can narrow it down. It's just tedious. And GIS has been down. So I do not have that list yet of property owners, but we can find them.
But intentionally, how would you be sending out the general survey? Who would it be going?
But without that narrowed audience, we would send it out to the distribution list we already have, which is about 6,500 Milton residents. And they're not sorted by any property owners. They're not sorted at all. They are people who have signed up for the city's newsletter.
A question of how much acreage they have in order to sift through the people?
Yes.
That's where I would
that.
go with that. I would generally, I'd put the whole survey out to the entire population and then have that as a question. So
like a qualifier.
Okay. You can qualify who people, what types of properties they own.
Well, yeah, because there are people like me that don't own farms, but I board horses.
Right.
In Milton.
Yeah,
and I'm not the only one. So
that was part of what I was interested in learning is people, not just people that own horses or own farms, but that are involved in equestrian life, taking riding lessons. That's an equestrian, to me. So I would still want to know what acreage they live on. If we can add that question in, I think that's still relevant. But personally, I'm interested in horse owners, but I'm also, anyone that's participating in this sport or lifestyle in any way is an equestrian. You don't have to own a horse or own a farm to.
Okay, so we do not want to qualify our question. We want to continue to send it out to everybody, and then ask specific Equestrian committee questions, is that right? What they're involved in, which those questions are already in there.
Yeah, I think that it was how much land do you
Yep.
own question.
So add that. Okay, sorry. And then Tony had, going back to fireworks for a second.
Okay.
Tony said, can you ask everybody what types of fireworks they think cause the most issue? Is it the noise or the colored flashes in the sky?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Noise.
Noise. Okay.
I'm sure there are some that have problems with the flash, but it's noise.
But you can avoid the flashes. You can't avoid the noise.
Yep.
Okay. That is all I have on the survey update was.
Okay, do we have anything else?
Just a thought. If you've been to Chicago, you see the cows, the painted cows on the sidewalks and stuff like that. And if we really want to brand ourselves as an equestrian community, is there any value in us getting into the horse business, i.e., in the roundabouts or maybe in certain areas downtown? And does the committee possibly play a role in selling those as a source of revenue to help us develop some of the projects that we're into?
We can. I think it'd be ideal to work with the Arts Committee on that and see if we can create a project that commingles.
Yeah, I think if we think of this as more of a fundraiser, then, we want to be careful because I don't know if and I need to research, okay, so the company, will they paint them, if you say, hey, I'm Shenandoah Farms, and they'll doctor it all up the way you want.
I think you can do it many different ways. If you're going to do those horses, say, those giant horses that everybody has for the giant cows, you say, if Shenandoah Farm wants to paint one, they pay a fee in order to be able to paint one that gets sold as an auction piece for the city to go to their fundraise for, Milton Equestrian Committee for their fundraiser. Or you can have kids at schools or whatever, just say, so-and-so's baseball team paints a horse, so-and-so's, 4-H team pays a horse. You can end up doing those types of programs too.
We could also have the nonprofit organization to do that.
They could be donated to the 501c3.
Yeah, because in the cities, it seems like there's a certain level of consistency, and that's why I wasn't sure if those companies, you gave them the concept, and then they created that. So, it certainly would be interesting to work with the arts community, but if it becomes a situation where, that's part of the package deal with the company, then I would say leave them out and just, keep the money for the committee's projects and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's just a thought. But once again, really kind of driving that concept of the equestrian, community to town. No one else around has anything like that. When you come and then especially with all the roundabouts, when I saw the roundabouts, that's what really got me going.
You're like, we need a horse in every roundabout.
Yeah.
But there could be corporate sponsorship for some of the roundabouts. For some of the other sites, it might be more mom and pop business that's more affordable. But I think it could be a really neat thing that could really launch us into that equestrian community that we claim we are and that we want to maintain. And the more public awareness we create, then it helps us on all these other issues. When we start tackling some of these other issues, that's going to go nowhere without really enlisting the whole community in who we are and what we are.
So Brian, since this is your big
Yeah,
baby,
I'll research
why
that.
don't you do some research and we'll see what we
I'm
can
on
come
it.
up with.
I'm on it.
I'm in a big favor of that.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, with no new business, let's adjourn. Is everybody, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Great.
All adjourned. Our next meeting is Wednesday, August 19th at 7 p.m. 2020.